Holly. Hello, all my good friends in Asturias. I wish I were with you in person. I love, love, love Asturias. I feel like I was born there. And I'm so happy to be able to share with you what I hope will fit with your theme and deepen your own understanding of the risks of being gifted. The gifted are the only group with special needs who can pretend to be like everyone else. Most gifted people expend an inordinate amount of energy trying to hide their differences, all the while knowing that they're not like everyone else. Instead of feeling better than everyone else because they're smart, more often they feel that their differences make them defective. So when do the gifted hide? When everyone has the same curriculum in school, when there's a glass ceiling on what they are allowed to learn, when they are not allowed to learn at their own rate, at their own pace. Disguised as cunningly as espionage agents, gifted students pass for normal. That's what they're spending their time in school learning to do instead of developing their abilities. They learn to play the game. They play the game and try to avert exposure. The rules are never reveal anything that will make you stand out. Act like everybody else and do not draw attention to yourself. Those are the rules that gifted children in our schools live by. The gifted excel at the art of imitation, but the cost of leading a double life is very heavy. Inauthenticity, self-alienation, inner conflict, not to mention the pain of having no one to celebrate your successes with. Especially in societies where provisions for advanced students are inadequate, the gifted tend to camouflage their abilities to try to blend in with their classmates. A prescription for loneliness. The number one coping strategy of gifted youth is invisibility. This was shared in a research article by Coleman in 2012, based on the study of how gifted children and youth cope in school. Their adeptness at dissembling, pretending, makes mental health issues of the gifted difficult to detect. And that was another author, King, and a group of people in 2019 who wrote that. Peterson and Jen in 2018 felt that the gifted may be differently at risk, and they found that a major consideration is asynchronous development inherent in the gifted, which has implications for social and emotional health. So asynchrony is a concept, asynchronous development, that was developed by the Columbus Group in 1991. And it means that the gifted have a qualitatively different lived experience when they're compared to individuals at the norm. And that's due to their advanced cognitive complexity, their heightened sensitivity and intensity, their uneven development, and being out of sync socially with their classmates. But many people misunderstand that heightened intensity of the gifted and look at it as immaturity. It is not. When we do studies of the gifted, we find that they are actually more mature in their attitudes, in their belief systems, in their behaviors than other students. But the heightened intensity makes them look like they're younger children to some uninformed people. We call that heightened intensity overexcitability. Coleman wrote that giftedness is stigmatizing. He developed a stigma of giftedness paradigm. He called them normal deviants. Last year, when I spoke at your conference in Asturias, I talked about the gifted being the neurodiverse. But most people think neurodiverse means autism. But neurodiverse is a much broader picture. And the term normal deviance isn't any better, of course, than neurodiverse. But we're looking at people who seem just like everyone else, but they know that they're different. And if you look carefully at them, you see their differences too. Coleman says that the gifted possess characteristics outside the norms for their age, gender, ethnic group, social class, and race. He mentioned rapid learning, depth and abstraction in learning, heightened sensitivity, intense interests, and asynchronous development. While they yearn for connection, the gifted soon realize that when others become aware of their giftedness, they will be treated differently. To manage the information that their classmates have about them, they dumb down. They hide their differences to prevent ridicule and rejection. The gifted often feel the need to choose between achievement and social acceptance. And that was described in great detail by the work of Dr. Mirica Gross in Australia. She wrote this in 1989. But I had a personal experience when I was teaching at the University of Denver that blew my mind. I had a graduate student in my Counseling the Gifted course, and she told the class that her greatest triumph was when she became the valedictorian of her class without her cheerleading team ever suspecting that she was smart. What lengths did she have to go to hide her intellect, to hide her giftedness? I called it stealth giftedness because it's giftedness that is hidden, masquerading as normal. But there is a cost to gifted individuals who are pretending so hard to be what they are not. Gifted people despise inauthenticity. Be true to yourself is a moral imperative for the gifted. Yet many children and adolescents feel compelled to lie to their classmates, hiding their performance on tests, feigning interest in things that do not interest them at all. In a recent study in Australia, mothers of the gifted felt that inauthenticity was an unfortunate but necessary sacrifice for their children. Managing the information others have about them takes an emotional toll on the gifted. I cannot show people who I really am. I must be unacceptable. That's a heavy burden for our gifted children and youth to have to bear. Cross-cultural studies in recent years have proven that Coleman's stigma of giftedness is real and it still is going on. A cross-cultural study of the social experience of gifted students confirmed the universality of Coleman's stigma of giftedness paradigm. Gifted children and adolescents were interviewed in the United Kingdom, South Korea, Ireland, France, and culturally diverse schools in the United States. In all countries, they found evidence that the gifted students attempted to pass for normal. And this is how they did it. These were the coping mechanisms that came from that study. Not offering answers in class, not sharing grades, lying about their test performance, not letting classmates know they were in gifted programs, intentionally underperforming. attempting to show interest in topics their peers enjoy, dumbing down, and staying quiet. This is where the energy of our gifted students is being used. And they live by a mantra, by a rule: do not outshine your friends because you won't have any. The gifted are caught between expectations of their parents and teachers to perform to the best of their abilities, but they also have the requirement of their friends not to outshine them. That's a catch-22. When they shine, they are taunted. The stakes are high. Their families count on their excelling, but if their giftedness is discovered, they will be disqualified from normality. What a thought. I can't be normal. I can't be like everybody else. Many gifted students go underground from that kind of pressure. In studies of the gifted, teasing and name calling were reported frequently. Some were teased if they did well, and even more if they failed to be the best in their class. In a US study of 432 gifted eighth graders in 11 states, Peterson and Ray in 2006 found that 2/3 of the gifted eighth graders experienced bullying, and more than 10% were victims of repeat bullying. Pfeiffer and Prado in 2018 report that 72% of gifted high school students were called names, compared to 40% of the comparison group. Gifted students were also teased more frequently than non-gifted students, which had a negative effect on self-esteem and feelings of belonging. Vulnerability arises when the gifted child is forced to fit the norms for average children, when the school environment is competitive, when bullying goes unchecked, when there are no other gifted children to relate to, when adults lack understanding of the child's inner world. The further the child veers from the norm, the greater that vulnerability. So here are things that I think we have to ask ourselves about schooling for the gifted. Developmentally advanced children are at risk in a society that prizes sameness. It's difficult to dare to be different when you have all of those costs that I just described. Down under in Australia and New Zealand, they call the gifted tall poppies. And they say that they cut the tall poppies down in Australia. The tall poppy syndrome is a very insidious worldwide phenomenon. It's a social phenomenon of attacking those of exceptional ability. The symbolism of cutting off the heads of tall poppies so that none is elevated above the rest has a grisly history. There's even mention of this in the Bible, that conquerors were told to get rid of, which means kill, eliminate, everyone that the population that they had just conquered respected. All the smart people, all the eminent people, all the clergy, all the people who stood out in any way and were respected. And if you got rid of them, then it was easier for a conqueror to take over another country or another territory. So when we talk about tall poppies, we're not just talking about poppies. We're actually talking about eliminating the intelligentsia because they're a threat. Human societies have severely and successfully limited the realization of individual promise. John Gardner, who was our Commissioner of Education, wrote this in a book called Excellence in 1961. Few people get it. Few grasp the fundamental experience of giftedness, the outsider status in a society suspicious of outsiders. Most people think that giftedness is just getting high marks in school, and that if you have a gifted child, that's wonderful, and how lucky you are, and how lucky these children are to be advanced. But that isn't what they experience. They experience being outsiders. They experience being left out and people being suspicious of them. There are countless cases of vanishing giftedness, those children whose talents are lost through lack of detection and nurturing. Unrecognized and undeveloped talents may be lost permanently. The potential concert violinist must have a violin and continuous nurturing of this ability to fulfill its potential. We can never know how much talent has been lost for lack of discovery or development, nor can we assess the magnitude of that loss to our society. The music that was never composed, the medical cure that was never discovered, the political strategy that might have averted a war. No one would intentionally stunt the growth of a child. Yet, this is what educational systems do when they are blind to individual differences in ability, when they believe all children have the same ability, which is a lie. In school, for every child with recognized gifts, still another goes unrecognized. That was research in the Denver public schools in the 1950s, and it has not changed in all these years. Equality is giving everyone a shoe, but equity is giving everyone a shoe that fits. Everyone deserves equal opportunity, but equal opportunity can never mean equal outcomes. We cannot set the exact same educational goals for the entire student body. That would be brutally inappropriate for all students who learn faster or slower than the norm. While the goal for one child is to be able to read books, the goal for another is to be able to write them. One student needs to master sufficient mathematics to balance a budget in adult life, while another needs exposure to enough advanced math to be able to discover a new source of energy. It is unrealistic to expect a regular classroom teacher to teach one child addition and another pre-calculus. Yet children of the same age may differ to that degree in their development, in their intellect. A one-size-fits-all curriculum forces students to dumb down. The most capable students need to be allowed to progress and develop their abilities instead of being used as assistant teachers. So one size does not fit all. Placing all students in the same program with the same learning goals, regardless of level of ability, just does not make any sense. Many gifted children endure school. They do not learn anything there. Their learning takes place at home when they ask Google questions. Is that fair for the smartest children in our classrooms to just endure school and not to learn anything? I believe that all children, including the gifted, have the right to learn new concepts every day rather than simply waiting while others learn. There's been studies that show that the major activity of gifted children in school is waiting, just waiting. The purpose of education is not to create identical automatons. Diversity is necessary, including intellectual diversity for the vast range of responsibilities in the world. Some tasks require a staggering degree of intelligence. When the gifted are understood as children with special needs, the mirror image of intellectual disability, they're protected by the values of egalitarianism. Gifted children are part of the biodiversity of the population. The belief that we all have equal intelligence discriminates against the gifted. When we refuse to acknowledge the existence of giftedness and we fail to provide appropriate educational provisions for children with significant differences, their learning and emotional needs go unattended. And the emotional needs are just as important as the learning needs. One boy said to Dr. Anna Marie Roper, "I feel invisible. I am invisible. Recess is the worst time. I feel I don't exist. I cannot stand it. The other children just walk around me." And this was written by a high school student and written for a book that was printed by the American Association for Gifted Children in 1978. We are not normal and we know it. It can be fun sometimes, but not funny always. We tend to be much more sensitive than other people. Multiple meanings, innuendos, and self-consciousness plague us. Intensive self-analysis, self-criticism, and the ability to recognize that we have limits make us despondent. That has not changed since 1978. The gifted can become despondent about world problems. A young child who has heightened emotions, coupled with advanced cognitive awareness of the suffering and perils of the world, feels helpless and afraid. You can't say to a gifted child, "Don't worry, honey, that won't happen in our country. That won't happen here," because they feel the pain of what happens to children all over the world. Giftedness is largely invisible. The visibly gifted are high achievers, the ones with high marks, and they represent only the tip of the iceberg. The vast majority of the world's millions of gifted children are hidden from view. If we took all the gifted children in the world, all of them, and lined them up, we would find that the vast majority of these children are poor. The vast majority of the millions of gifted children in the world are poor. And in the United States, people believe that giftedness is just an advantage for the rich because the percentage of gifted children in upper classes is higher. But there is a much greater number of gifted children among the lower classes because the poor far outnumber the rich everywhere in the world. Early identification of gifted children in poverty is absolutely necessary for them to develop their abilities. They need support. And if they get that support, it's life-changing. Gifted children of color may be very isolated, and this is true in the United States. The gifted program may be the only place where they feel safe, make friends who understand them, and are urged to develop their talents. This is described in a book written by Michelle Obama in the book Becoming. Gifted programs have brought us leaders from every station of life, in every color, in every circumstance. Michelle wrote, "I wasn't afraid to raise my hand in class," and this was at a special school for the gifted. At Whitney Young, it was safe to be smart. You never hid your intelligence for fear of someone saying you talk like a white girl. We worsen inequality because children of privilege have access to a wealth of resources, whereas children with limited means are dependent on public schools to identify them and develop their special abilities. But I want to talk now about one group of children gifted girls for whom this hiding is intensified and occurs at a younger age. Myra and David Sadker wrote, "Girls are the only group who begin school scoring ahead and leave behind a theft occurring so quietly that most people are unaware of its impact." Fitting in is so important to gifted girls that they are forced to hide their abilities rather than development. They have very powerful affiliation needs. It should not be like this. No one should be ashamed of being different. The gifted deserve the same protection in schools as all other diverse groups. Their diversity needs to be recognized. School should be an emotionally safe place for gifted children to stand tall and be proud of who they are. But I have talked to gifted children in many different countries, and I have found that giftedness is not safe in most places. In New Zealand, I did a workshop with gifted elementary school children, and I found out that 1/3 of the boys had been beaten up for being gifted. School was not safe for them to be gifted. That should not be tolerated. Now, this is an eye-opening experience. A mother who brought her child to us to be tested at Gifted Development Center showed me this beautiful picture that her very advanced child had drawn at the age of 3 years and 3 months. A child riding a bicycle and a car. And Anya wrote her name on the picture. She wrote it backwards, but she wrote it. But look what happens to Anya after she starts preschool. At 3 years, 6 months, her mother forced her to draw. And her mother wrote, "This was drawn during Anya's scribbling phase. After much cajoling, Anya drew this, but then scribbled over it because she said, 'They are hiding, and my friends just like to scribble.' 3 years, 6 months. And she didn't write her name on this. She wrote Mommy. Because she was only doing this for her mother. She had already lost, at 3.5 years old, her sense of herself. How would girls' lives be different? Stevens Davidovich says, if parents were half as concerned with their bodies and twice as intrigued with their minds. I love this poster that I saw. Forget princess, I want to be an astrophysicist. We need to grow beyond the narrow confines of competitiveness to appreciate the gifted instead of being threatened by them. In all the countries that I visited, the gifted seem to be fair game. The media can put them down, other kids can put them down, teachers can put them down, because it's okay to put down people that you think are more advanced than you. It's not okay to put down anyone you think is less intelligent or less fortunate than you. But if you think that the gifted are more fortunate, then you feel perfectly justified in knocking them down a peg. What does that do to their self-esteem? What does that say about the development of abilities for every gifted child? What does that say about the safety of schools? We need to make schools a safe place for the gifted. Every gift contains a danger. This was written to me by a parent many years ago in 1993. Whatever gift we have, we are compelled to express. And if the expression of that gift is blocked, distorted, or merely allowed to language, then the gift turns against us and we suffer. If we have been given the gift of artistic talent, the gift of empathy, the gift of fast recognition of patterns, the gift of the understanding of mathematics at a very deep level, the gift of the use of words, whatever gifts we've been given, the gifts have been given to us to develop and express. And if we don't do that, we suffer. And everyone in society suffers because they're losing our gift. This was a part of a poem that I read about a few years ago when I was writing an article on a chapter actually on counseling asynchronous children in school. The seed. And what didn't you do to bury me? But you forgot I was a seed. So even if society tries to bury you, even if society is working against gifted children and pushing them down into the ground and they go underground, they are seeds. And with nourishment, they will come to the surface and they will blossom. Thank you.
Ara acabat. Sí, bueno, ahora supongo que si algú té
Muchas
alguna-
gracias, Linda. Vamos a dejar que el público te haga alguna pregunta y puedas compartir con ellos.
Sí, no el reconeixes, tal com sense veure,
Com és que posa Alejandro Rodríguez?
perquè deu
Y
estar ordinant.
aunque ahí está escrito Alejandro, Linda, yo me llamo Juan.
És que abans de venir a la francesa li anava dient Alejandro, m'ha dit.
M'han llegit el pensament o què?
Tu te'l posis per anar
Loli,
fotent.
había una pregunta. Loli. Y luego va. Stop your presentation, please, Linda.
Fins on podem jugar?
Adelante. Pon el micro.
Good morning, Linda.
Good morning, Lali.
Yo tengo una pregunta que es, ¿qué hacéis en vuestro centro para que las niñas puedan desarrollar su potencial, que no pasen desapercibidas? ¿Tenéis algún programa, algún sistema para potenciar que las niñas brillen y se desarrollen como deben?
One thing I do is tell parents that everywhere in the world where there are centers that test gifted children, parents bring in their sons more often than their daughters. They bring in 2/3 of the children who get tested are male. They're more worried about their sons, that their sons might not achieve. And I had an experience many years ago that was shocking to me. These parents in Colorado brought in their son and their daughter for testing. What they said to me is they were worried about their son, but they brought their daughter in as a decoy so that he wouldn't be worried that we were trying to find something wrong with him. So she was just there to make him more comfortable. She had a 180 IQ that her parents did not even know she was gifted. So the first thing I do is I try to tell parents how important it is for them to bring their daughters for testing. I tell parents that siblings are usually within 13 IQ points and that gifted siblings are often within 10 IQ points. And if your son is gifted, your daughter is gifted too, and she's much more likely to hide. So I try to give the parents this information so that they'll bring in their daughters for testing. I talk to schools about what happens to the gifted girl. And I try to get teachers to refer the girls for gifted programs as often as they refer the boys. And I write chapters and I write articles. And I have written an article for teenagers and for teachers of teenagers to be gifted or feminine, the forced choice of adolescence. I try to, in the literature and in my presentations and in the work I do with parents and with teachers, alert them to the fact that girls are overlooked. And when I talk to girls myself, I tell them that they can either be a part of the problem or a part of the solution. That's their choice. If they decide to hide who they are, they will be a part of the problem. But if they choose to show who they really are, to show their giftedness, they will be role models for all the other gifted girls that come after them. And I try to instill in them a desire to show their real talents and real abilities instead of hiding them.
Muchas gracias, Linda. ¿Una pregunta más?
Hola, Linda. Mira, yo quería preguntarte, dada la cantidad de personas superdotadas con las que has trabajado, ¿cómo ves el fomentar el deporte que piensas o que has visto entre los alumnos de altas capacidades para desarrollar esa salud física, mental, emocional, incluso sus habilidades sociales? Gracias.
I think it's very important. Gifted children may not like group sports. Many of them like individual sports. They like swimming and fencing and martial arts and opportunities to develop their abilities, their physical abilities, without necessarily competing with other children. So I often tell parents that it's important that their child be involved in physical exercise and physical development. They can't forget that part of their experience. It's very important to the development of a well-rounded personality. It's very important to their physical health. It's important if they have ADHD symptoms to do physical exercise. So I am totally in favor of sport.
Muchas gracias. Sí, Linda, ahora te van a hacer otra pregunta.
Un placer hablar con usted, Linda. Yo quería comentarle, bueno, aparte que para mi hijo tiene 15 años, la vida solo es el deporte, pero por otro lado le pasa lo contrario que pasa habitualmente, y es que los patios para él son una pesadilla y él se mantiene separado del resto, incluso se pone tapones en los oídos porque no quiere saber nada de nadie. Se cierra en banda. nadie le interesa. Le interesa la gente mayor o los profesores, pero no la gente que le rodea. Y es muy duro tener que mandarle al colegio y que viva eso, tenga que vivir diariamente eso. Vamos, que no sabemos qué hacer ante esa situación, porque al colegio tiene que ir.
Well, this is a complicated question, and I would have to know more about your son to know exactly what to advise you to do, and more about what young people are allowed to do in your country educationally. I can only answer this from what I would say to parents in the United States. In the first place, a child who is 15 and very advanced, I would encourage to take some courses in college. I would encourage that child to audit those courses, not to have to take it for credit or to get any degree or credit bearing transcript from it, but simply to know that there is a place where intelligence is valued. It may not be in their high school, but it is in college. And if they can just live long enough to get to college, they will start to find intelligent people to interact with. They'll find intelligent professors who will appreciate who they are. And if this 15-year-old starts to see college as a goal, something to look forward to, that will inspire your son, I believe, if it's possible to do that. I don't know if you can do it in Spain, but I think it would inspire him to do his best while he's in school so that he can get into college. And if he has too much trouble making friends, there are social skills groups, there are therapists who work with children, but it's normal for a gifted individual to hang out with older people because they have a higher mental age. If we think about mental age in comparison to chronological age, a 4-year-old with a gifted mind has a 6-year-old, at least 6-year-old mind in a 4-year-old body. At 8, that person has a 12-year-old mind in an 8-year-old body. At 16, we're talking about a person who has a 24-year-old mind in a 16-year-old body. Of course, he's going to want to hang out with older people. Of course, 15-year-olds are going to be boring because he has nothing in common with them. But if you decide to do therapy just to get him through the rest of high school, then do that. But if you can get him in college early, even to experience it so that he gets the feeling of the quad, he'll know that life is not going to be like it is right now for the rest of his life. It gets better in college.
Muchas gracias, Linda. Y ahora ya nos vamos a despedir de ti. Linda, ha sido un rato muy agradable. Estamos muy contentos de haberte tenido con nosotros, de haber aprendido contigo, de haber escuchado tus palabras. Y un placer, como siempre, que hablemos. Y va a despedirse de ti, Loli, Linda. Hasta siempre, un abrazo.
You're in my heart.
Un placer hablar contigo aquí en directo, Linda. Muchas gracias y feliz de que estuvieras con nosotros. Gracias.
I'm happy to see you too, Lolly. Bye.